Welcome back to the latest episode of the Be Better podcast. And with me today, I have Ian Cooper from Tasman Trolleys and Medical Equipment. Ian, how's it going?
Great, thanks, Tim. And you?
I'm doing really, really well. We were just sort of talking beforehand. I'm getting increasingly despondent as the weather's getting better here in New Zealand, and the snow and the ski season is contracting. But that's my problem to deal with. And we'll work.
You've got to take up golf now, Tim.
Oh, I don't know about that. I don't have the patience for golf. 100%. I refer to it as whack fuck, because that's typically what happens. I whack it. I'm normally good for one hit. I can kind of get it all. The other thing I found with golf is that I've only ever hired clubs, and I am 6'4", and mostly the clubs that you're hiring in a golf club are not designed for someone of 6'4". I just don't have the patience for you got to get your legs this far apart and then bend your. It's like I just want to hit it. I'm more of the Happy Gilmore style of approach to life.
There's another approach to golf that you need to look at.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to capture me, but nice try. Are you a skier before we get into anything else?
I have done, but not for a while.
No, fair enough. We'll let you off.
Yeah.
We'll let you off.
North Island, not great skiing.
Yeah, we can get into the machinations.
The ins and outs of that.
But maybe we should do a ski podcast as a separate thing.
Not with me.
B Corps that ski. It'd be pretty niche. There is one B Corp ski field, Taos, I think it's called Taos ski field in New Mexico.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah. So there we go.
Wow, that would be interesting.
Yeah. But anyway,
to try and find a B Corp golf.
That's a great question. I don't, because there's a couple of B Corp ski companies. There's Faction Skis or a B Corp. Picture Clothing, they make the ski clothing. They're a B Corp. And Patagonia, I suppose they have ski wear. So there's a little bit of action happening in the ski world. But yeah, I don't know if, like I say, golf and me. Pitch and putt. We took a bunch of clients out to Holy Moly in Auckland a couple of weeks ago. So for those of you, I think they're in Aussie as well. So if you're listening in Aussie, you might have heard of them. The US, I don't think they're there. But yeah, it's like an indoor crazy golf with beer and pizza. What could go wrong? That was good fun. So yeah, that's about the limit of my skills.
Yeah.
But anyway, beyond golf and not skiing, who are you? And tell us a bit more about what Tasman Trolleys and Medical Equipment's all about.
Okay, so a little bit about me, sort of a background history in manufacturing, a lot of international sales and marketing experience in manufacturing. Delved a little bit into finance world and some other online marketing, and came back into manufacturing, really around probably looking for authentic products and authentic manufacturing. And then through that process got into medical, came across Tasman Trolleys about 4 or 5 years ago, started working with the owner at that point. And opportunity came up to transition from his ownership to our ownership. So we took control of the business about sort of 2.5 years ago and have been actively working in it since then. Business has been around for about 65 years, manufacturing in the same location. We're a small team. So two of the guys, one guy's been here for 50 years. One guy's been for 40 years.
Wow. Do they get a set of golf clubs on their 40th and 50th anniversaries?
No. They get a park right out the front of the building.
Nice.
So long history there that is well recognised. So some nice good stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a company we've just recently worked with on their B Corp, similar to what you just described. Like the previous owner was in their 70s, had been running the company for 30, 40 years. Younger blood was working in the company as a general manager. Hey, actually, can we look at maybe, could this be your retirement plan? We could buy you out. Shout out to my mate Dietmar in Christchurch, who he's a big fan of helping people work out that transition from selling their business and making sure they get a good get a good and fair price for it. I think there's quite a lot of opportunity around at the minute. I mean, my mate Dietmar, he always talks about how this is the biggest transfer of wealth, generational wealth. There's a lot of baby boomers, maybe family run business, maybe the kids don't want to take over the business. Okay, well, it's selling stuff, it's got widgets, whereas someone like me, when I hang up my B Corp boots in probably however many years time, I doubt my daughter's going to take over the business. And I don't think really, other than outside of law and accounting, not many consulting firms tend to be inherited by the next generation.
No, that's interesting. I think certainly the longevity of the business here, and you see what some of the other manufacturing. I think there was a publicly listed healthcare company in New Zealand that's just put out their 30-year plan, and there's a freight company in New Zealand that's got their 100-year plan. So it is quite interesting as you delve into some of the strategies that some of their businesses employ, what they think of that long-term perspective.
Nice.
And yeah, so we manufacture in New Plymouth, so in Taranaki, have been manufacturing here, say, for 65 years, supply through to hospitals, primarily in New Zealand, a little bit offshore, but primarily into New Zealand.
Nice.
So we just deal with medical.
Nice. So yeah, a world that I am intimately familiar with, having spent a good 10 or however many years as a medical device rep. I guess it's interesting because have you been watching that Painkillers on Netflix?
Yes. Yeah. Quite different from a New Zealand scenario, and you do start to appreciate the benefits we have in New Zealand of more control over
a bit more regulation,
the distribution of drugs and other components.
100%. Yeah, all those. So for people outside of New Zealand, we have I guess is it government run Pharmac? I don't know, or is it? It's government run. So basically, a big agency that sits and regulates the admission of pharmaceutical products into New Zealand, and they then also push back against the companies to agree better pricing. My wife used to be a pharmaceutical rep, and I've got a couple of mates who used to be pharmaceutical reps. I used to sell hips and knees and then spinal instruments and implants. So we were never, Pharmac historically didn't regulate any of that stuff. So it was a bit of an open season. It was kind of, you could get stuff into hospitals and pick a price to a degree. It's a wacky world. I don't think most members of the public appreciate. I mean, I've just dropped my mum at the hospital today for a day procedure. I think most people walking into the hospital don't realise that pretty much everything that they see in that hospital has been sold in by a company. From the door handles through to the trolleys, through to the medical equipment, the uniforms. You kind of don't think of as a hospital as a customer or as a
No, and the complexity of it and the nature of a hospital dealing with health, you don't want to make decisions quickly because you are playing with lives, and therefore longevity of product, longevity of drugs is an important process in that part. So we every time you go into a hospital, every time I go into a hospital, particularly now, the focus from the public on hospitals and medical, you always appreciate the length and the dedication those people go to in the hospitals. So, as we're going through that centralisation model in New Zealand, you can see where there's opportunities to improve things. And your Pharmac plays a role in that, and Te Whatu Ora Health New Zealand likewise.
Because when I was in the medical industry, there was talk about Pharmac getting involved across the board with all medical devices. Is that happened, or is that still
that is a slow transition? As you said, there's so much that goes into a hospital. Trying to control all those components and is difficult, and trying to tender and have contracts in place for those. So they've got a huge job on to deal with that. So one of their goals is to deal with that, is to have more going through them and under their control. But I guess the centralisation of Health New Zealand sort of helps some of that as well.
It's interesting. I was talking to someone on a ski lift the other day about the sort of centralisation of stuff in the medical world, or in the purchasing of medical products. And they were sort of saying, but we need to have better personal choice, and what fits one person. And I was like, well, yes, but equally, I remember back in the day, one of the large medical companies got found out. I think someone moved health boards, someone in the procurement team. So it used to be there were multiple district health boards across New Zealand, which, yes, it's great you have local control, but also you have probably 40, I think it was about 10 or 14 health boards.
We had 20. So
20, there we go.
Yeah, 20. So if you take South Island wasn't too bad, because I think you had 4 or 5 there. The North Island particularly bad. So within some areas you had, for example, Wairarapa, you had the Wairarapa District Health Board. Then you had, Capital Coast, then you had Hart. So you had in very small regions, you had
almost a hospital or like a couple of
Yeah.
hospitals on. Yeah,
Yeah,
and so
yeah,
there's
and that, as you
obviously
say, that localization is important, but perhaps there's other ways to
yeah,
achieve that.
because I remember what one person must have moved. I think it was from uh, the Gisborne area health board to the Auckland one, and they looked. Hang on a minute, in Gisborne we were paying like 4 times the price for the same piece of
Mm,
equipment, and so
mm,
the company were called in, and they connected the dots, and it's like, please explain. It's like,
yeah,
yeah, that's a bit
yeah,
awkward, really, isn't it? Okay.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so
Yeah, and
I
I
think
think
there's
the obviously with the pandemic, I think the good thing is that the public now has a greater appreciation of the need to invest in health, both from an infrastructure perspective, and also the role that nurses and other critical workers actually play, and what they have to put up with on a day-to-day basis, which many of us probably would struggle with.
yeah, totally.
So I think that's certainly, if there's anything good thing to come out of the pandemic, then I guess
Yeah.
it's the realization that health and education and other things are really important investments.
Yeah, it's like
So
a little wacky, it's its own wacky micro world that you just
yeah,
don't.
yeah,
Yeah, like I said,
yeah.
most people, you just think, oh, hospital, they're going to fix me, but you don't realize it's actually like almost a small town or a small village
It is a small
with
town.
its own
Yeah.
stuff going on.
And
Yeah,
then I think the other part that we perhaps don't always understand in New Zealand is access to some of those specialists. If you're remote, you can't always have that particular specialist in your region. You may have to travel with whānau and family, and that's just the nature of the beast to get the best service.
yeah,
And then the other one out of that is you don't really want to be in hospital. So if they kick you out quickly, it's a good thing.
yeah, 100%.
Where sometimes we perceive that as being a bad thing.
Yeah,
But you get better at home than you do in a hospital.
yeah, yeah. There's some good evidence. I was listening to a podcast yesterday or something, and they were talking about yeah, like the space that you're in and how that can aid recovery.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
patients who were on a ward that had a view of a park or green
Yep.
space typically healed more quickly than those who were
Yep.
inside a
Yep.
brick walls. So yeah, it's amazing
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
the mind
Yeah. We've seen quite a
can
bit of
be
research
influenced.
on that, and certainly in the biophilic sort of space to make sure you do have that connection. And in fact, you're lucky in the new wards and in the new wing at Christchurch. The views across Hagley Park are amazing. Floor to
Yeah,
ceiling glass
yeah,
and those sort of things. Which, as you put, the research suggests that will speed up your recovery and you'll be out of there faster. Which is good for everyone.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone wins. Yeah. So so you're new to medical, because you're generally Auckland based, but like you say, the company, or have you pretty much relocated now down to the mighty
Relocated, yes. So
Taranaki?
made the transition out of Auckland.
Nice,
So
nice,
so we're now rather than
full
commuting
time.
back, I was in Auckland yesterday. So we just go for the couple of days as opposed to now
So you
commuting
you
between.
flipped it round.
Flipped it
Um,
round. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
exactly. So
But you grew up in Auckland. You're in Auckland
grew up in
originally.
Auckland.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
so
schooled in Auckland.
yeah, and then
Um,
so yeah, so talk me through, like, yeah, so your early career, like I said, you've done a few mixed roles, but
Yeah, I was in manufacturing for quite a bit. I did a Bachelor of Management Studies at Waikato University, and a lot of focus then on international. Worked for a couple of manufacturing companies. Had the pleasure and the opportunity to travel internationally through those. So that exposed me to a whole lot of stuff, as it does. Spent 4 years in the States. And then made the transition return to New Zealand.
nice. Whereabouts in the States were you hanging around?
We were living in LA.
Oh wow,
So yeah, so
a bit different to Auckland.
bit different from Auckland. Yeah, yeah. When you talk about traffic, you have a different appreciation. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's a bit like going from New Plymouth to back to Auckland.
yeah,
You realise what traffic is.
100%. Yeah.
And so then went into financial services for a period of time, and then went back to manufacturing. It's always good to try and find, well, what I was looking for was authentic product, authentic manufacturing. And once you can touch a product and you can see the people who've been making it, it's quite a rewarding process. It certainly helps you to sell and market the product more easily.
I think
And
sorry, you go.
no, you go.
I was going to say that there's a real connection to purpose around that as well, because I think in the modern world, there's a lot, cheap, quick. If it breaks, just buy a new one. Really disconnected value chains where you go and buy it from a store where the person selling it doesn't really know where it's come from, doesn't really care about it. The people who have made it and distributed it don't ever meet you as the customer, whereas you go back, I don't know, maybe even 1,000 years, or probably maybe even less than that, go back to before the Industrial Revolution. And I mean, well, Cooper, you'd be the barrel maker for us.
Barrel maker. Yeah, exactly.
So, we gave the name of the function that you did for the village or for the town. It had so much meaning that we name ourselves after it. And you'd be making the barrel. You'd have that sense of meaning and craftsmanship in making the barrel. And I come and buy the barrel to put my beer in it or whatever I want to store in it. And I go, wow, that's a really beautiful barrel. And maybe you've engraved my name on it because you're a really nice guy and you've done that for free. And I come home and I have this barrel and I probably keep that barrel for all my life. And then I hand it down to my kids and their kids. And there's that history, there's that meaning, there's that connection that we've had, there's the meaning that you've had. Whereas now it's just, let's just churn out as many as we can. And if it breaks tomorrow, great, they're buying another one.
And I think in the last couple of years we've probably seen, particularly with supply chain, sort of slowing stuff down and people understanding a bit more, perhaps a bit more time and the flow of information. People are starting to look at that with a bit more detail. I guess that was one of the things that we were trying to work out, how, as a small manufacturer, small design manufacturing company, how we could actually validate that externally, which is why we ended up down this path. I totally agree with you. And was one of the struggles, certainly in financial services, that I had, was that the connection between the service delivery and the product and the person was quite remote, and it was becoming more and more remote.
Yeah,
as you say, even you walking down to the bank doesn't happen anymore. That decision-making process sometimes is truncated.
Yeah, computer says no. Done.
Yeah, exactly. Or an email no one responds to, those sort of things. So I think there's probably a desire for some of that to come back where it can, as those touch points.
That sort of rehumanization of work. I think people are increasingly realizing that. I mean, the stats over the last few years just show increasingly less meaning achieved through work, and there's good evidence. I think it's if you don't have a sense of fulfillment and meaning in work, there's only a 1% chance that you will have overall total life satisfaction. So we kind of think, well, it's okay, I can just go and self-medicate on the weekend by getting boozed or eating out or playing lots of golf to distract myself from the
it doesn't work.
But it doesn't. It'll always catch up with you by the end of it. So
it's so we were looking, we stumbled across this opportunity. We were a customer of this organization,
nice.
And just seemed to align because, again, we were one of the few people who walked into the office and met with the people.
Yeah. So you're like Mr. Remington. I like the company so much I bought it.
Yes. Not quite like that, but it certainly had a very strong reputation in the industry for longevity, and we've always wanted to continue that. It was an exciting prospect. It was a bit of a gem that was unpolished.
Yep.
Wasn't well known in the local region, well known in the medical segment that we played in, but within the region, no one really knew we were here. So nice. We're quite keen to go out and tell the story because it is a good story.
Yeah, and plenty of opportunity by the sounds of it.
Tons of opportunity.
Yeah. And so, I mean, manufacturing. I guess it's interesting though. If you, I don't know, maybe if we polled the old family fortunes, we polled 100 people walking down the street and said, local manufacturing. Would you, is that a boom industry? Because you hear in general, you hear quite a lot of tales of closures and everything's going offshore. Particularly, I guess there has been a bit of a clothing industry in New Zealand based on the back of the wool industry, local manufacturing. There's, some well-known companies that aren't doing that anymore. How's that? What I mean, obviously you guys are doing it differently. The company's been doing it differently for a while, but what's your sense in general of that localization of manufacturing? Is it coming back?
It's a really good question. And I think if you'd asked that question 4 or 5 years ago, pre-pandemic, people would have said, no, it's all, globalization is sort of taking over and many companies are suffering because of that. And there's obviously still an element of that, but you've probably seen since post-pandemic that we're probably coming back a little bit because the supply chain was certainly, it did hurt a lot of people. And I think people had a bit more time to understand a little bit more about what was going on, and why there is a need to support some of those local businesses, because if they do fold, then, there's people out in the street. So I think you still have to the niche component is really important. You still have to find what you're good at, and build upon that. And yes, we compete daily with imported product, and we're trying to find ways that we can separate ourselves out from the stuff that has been imported and made in other low cost environments. But we can't sit on that and expect that people will just buy us because of that. You still have to be innovative. You still have to try and do things differently, and you have to get that connection at that emotional level with what you do, and that's part of telling the story. So I think there's probably growing signs of that in that niche area. Investment in automation, investment in some of the technology components probably is something that is needed. Not quite sure if there's an understanding at some of the business organizations levels, whether the support and how they can support that, particularly small organizations. And that's the nature of New Zealand manufacturing and New Zealand businesses. We are all small. So I think there needs to be a better understanding of how you can do that. I mean, the fact that, Tim, you and I have never met, is a good example of how we've used two small businesses have used technology. Now, if you've got to try and look at that in other parts of your business, it's relatively straightforward. But we were just talking internally here about some of the technology and some of the machines we've got, but who's going to help us? Who's going to be the Tim who's helping us navigate through some of the technology that is out there, without paying huge hourly rates for a consultant offshore or something like that. So I think there's really good opportunities. You just have to be perhaps a little bit smarter about it than perhaps we were before. But the pandemic has certainly helped that focus on why we need local manufacturing to cut those supply chain lines down from where they were.
That's that supply chain resilience. I was talking to someone at a dinner party not so long ago. We don't go to many of those.
But very Christchurch.
The guy who I was talking to he's in the medical device industry. He sells device, screws and plates and stuff. And when I was selling stuff into hospitals, like I say, this is a good 10, 12 years ago, I left the industry. Social and environmental decision making, and where's the product come from, what was not on the radar. Basically, we don't really care. Most of the large companies that sell products are US or European based, but almost all of it is manufactured in China. But the workarounds seem to be that as long as one part of the process was done in Germany or America, you could then put on the box "Made in America" or "Made in Switzerland."
Designed in California.
All of that kind of stuff. So I think literally, if the product, if it was kind of like, even if it was just assembled in the box in Germany, there was it was like a real big workaround. You could say this is made in Germany, but actually it was manufactured in China.
So, and not that made in China is a bad thing.
No, totally not. Totally not.
We've got to look at that in a positive light, because it has helped in so many different ways, and they do have manufacturing capabilities and size and scale that we just don't have.
Totally. And there's Jessie Wong from Yu Mei. They make beautiful handbags based in Wellington. I've had a couple of conversations with her about her supply chain, and she gets very fired up, I guess, because a lot of their supply chain is in China, but they have reintroduced artisan crafts, techniques and skills to a labor force in China, so that, as you say, at scale they can create beautiful crafted products, where you're just not going to get that scale and the ability to do that locally. So totally agree. It's not all it's made in Asia, bad. Equally, there's stuff that's made in New Zealand or the US or Europe.
Absolutely.
That's absolute crap. So Yeah,
Yep, and the
it all comes
processes
down.
behind that are
Yeah,
equally as bad. So
yeah,
yeah, I don't think we can yeah look at some of those offshore markets and instantly assume that
yeah.
they're all bad. It has
Terrible.
given us
Yeah.
opportunities.
Um, but are you finding an increasing interest from people that you're supplying to around the fact that you're locally made, and also that now you're a B Corp, that you can kind of go, well, actually, we tick quite a few boxes here, as well as just having, like you say, the product's got to be good. But are you
Yeah.
finding there's more interest in the supply chains that you're dealing with around how it's made and where it's come from?
There's certainly a lot of interest in supporting local, depending on your definition of local, and assuming your hygiene factors are all in place, so you can deliver. You got your price right, you got your design right,
Yep.
you got your delivery right, and all those sort of certain things. There's certainly an interest in supporting local. The validation of what that actually means is quite important, and I think that's the part that we were trying to separate ourselves. So it's supporting local. And making local and designing local is a bit different from supporting local from someone who's importing.
Yeah.
So the B Corp side, I don't know if there's a huge understanding of what it is, but that's part for us to tell our story and enables us to provide a vehicle to do that. So for those people we have, absolutely. There's a good involvement in it, and it helps us to align with them, and it does help us to when we're up against a competitor, is to try and highlight the factors that help us achieve this. So yeah, there's certainly a stronger understanding for that, and certainly overseas, as we start to sort of play in some of those areas, we know we will have to deal with some of those issues. So part of it with doing it was preparation for what we think is going to come down the line.
Yep.
And looking at a range of different options we could have, this just seemed to be the most logical one for the business, and for where we sit and what we wanted to achieve.
Nice. Yeah, like I say, talking to this guy, he was talking about hospital procurement, wanting to know the carbon footprint of a widget that's being sold in, and they want to know about the packaging and is it recyclable. And I've connected you with Ollie from MedSouth.
Yes, you have. Yeah. So they're one of the ones that we've been loosely in contact with. Yeah.
Cool. So I think we're interviewing Ollie in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
So watch
cool.
this space if you're interested in medical device B Corps, because there's another one coming up. We're going really niche on the podcast.
Well, I think they're the first medical in New Zealand, and we're the second.
I can't remember now who came through first.
They just beat us by 1 month, so that's
right. Okay.
Yeah, we were. But we're only the third in the Taranaki region, so that was
nice.
Quite
so you
good.
got that. Yeah,
we got that, and we're manufacturers as opposed to they're not manufacturing. So there's differences in that. But yeah, you're right. There is that understanding. I think that's having a structure by which you can go through and unpick some of that with your own suppliers. In fact, we had a supplier in here the other day just talking about TY point and aluminium, which is a large component of what we put into our product, aluminium. And just looking at the comparisons between TY point and some of the other aluminium that was manufactured overseas. So having a means of validating that is really, really important.
Nice. So would you say you've always had a purpose, bent on life? Like, have you always been a purpose-driven type person, or did you feel connected to that?
No, not really.
Idea?
I mean, I've gone. Yeah, it's. I think particularly with the small business, trying to find, there were things that they were doing prior to us arriving, that your standard connection with your local community, that perhaps weren't being recognised other than perhaps a certificate in the mail and those sort of things, and working with other, or the way they worked with their workers. So no, I don't think I could honestly say hand on heart that was my bent. As you go through some of the other certification processes, you start to see the positive and negative of some of those. Some of them are product based, doesn't really allow for modularity. Some of them are manufacturing based, but maybe reasonably cost prohibitive in terms of how they do things. So no, I don't think that. I think probably like a lot of people in the last 5 to 10 years, it's probably, and as as you age, you start to have a greater understanding of those sort of things.
Yep.
And one of the good things about having people who've been here for 40 or 50 years is you start to understand some of the decisions that have been made prior to us coming on board. And I think that's there's certainly a great appreciation of that as you start to unpick that. So no, I think it's something that is developed as you go through your career, as you start to see, yep, it's great that I can buy this for $1, but where is it actually coming from?
Yep.
Which perhaps when you're 25 is slightly different from when you're slightly older than 25. So I think those, and I say that sort of stop in everyone's life, 2 or 3 years ago, really gave people a chance to take that breath and to really understand, well, is this what I want? Is this how it should be?
Yeah, I agree. I think that's had a massive, the B Corp movement has just accelerated in the last 2 to 3 years. And I think the pandemic was a big moment where a lot of people, like you say, I mean, other than those of us who were part-time primary school teachers trying to parent, and my wife and I were both, both self-employed. So we're both trying to keep businesses going when most clients that I had lined up basically said, well, we don't know if we're going to be here in November. So can we just call it all off for now? Sure. Yeah, no problems. Great.
Yeah, I'll call you in November.
If I'm still here.
Yeah, exactly.
But other than those trials and tribulations, and we were just in the middle of building a house as well. That was fun. So other than all of that, I think, we all kind of collectively walked our dogs to within an inch of their lives, realized that, it actually is quite peaceful. It's quite quiet. I can hear the birds. There's no noise pollution. It's nice and green. I'm having, some time to just, and I think a lot of business leaders, I think, and the other thing I sort of pose the question semi-regularly in workshops and talks I give is, if your business wasn't deemed essential during the lockdown, well, why are you here? If you're not essential to human existence, you're kind of on the edges, really, then, aren't you? You're taking up a bit of space, taking up a bit of oxygen. So yes. how do you make your not? And I think this is the marketing conundrum of wants versus needs. Well, this is essential. There's lots of things that are like the phone. It's essential. Well, is it?
Coffee.
I mean, coffee. Is it essential? Like we've gone thousands of years without this stuff. It's been made to be. So I think there's a lot of those kind of conversations that have been had.
Yeah, and I think you're right, and I think also because we were obviously an essential. We were supplying to hospitals.
Yep.
And some of the challenges you had with your suppliers to validate that you were essential and that they were an important part of your process. So they had to pick up the slack. In fact, I was talking to someone the other week about B Corp, and just talking about the different approaches that some suppliers took during that period. Some just went, no, our lead times have gone from 3 or 4 weeks in one case out to 9 months in another, where another organization said, no, we'll prioritize all our components for healthcare, even though we supply education and other components, because we know healthcare is essential. Nice. So it's getting that alignment with your suppliers as well to make sure that you can move forward when you have those sort of periods of stress. I think there was all a view on what essential is and how you can essentially provide to us.
But I think it's interesting. I mean, it sounds like you were developing some stronger supply chain relationships through those conversations to help people understand, like, hey, look, we're not just making a widget here that it's like, actually we are supporting the healthcare system. So could you was there a change in, because that's one of my arguments, which is unconfirmed. I'm looking at working with a consulting firm to get a report or a study or a white paper done on this, because my theory is that if you put B Corp in the middle, you get better employee engagement, because employees go, wow, this company's really cool. It's doing more than just trying to make money. It's got a social purpose or an environmental impact at its heart. Your customers kind of go, wow, like, you're a really cool company. You're looking after your customer, looking after us. You're looking after your employees. You're measuring and reporting your impact holistically. If you've got any investors, increasingly they are all wanting to know, hey, if we're going to lend you money, the retail banks are now looking at the investments that they've got and going, hey, Ian, your carbon emissions are a bit too big. So before we lend you any more money, we need to have a chat about your carbon emissions. So that's happening. And then yeah, with your supply chain. So my theory is if all of your main stakeholders could see the good that you do and the benefit that you're providing, that you have better relationships, which is why B Corps are typically more resilient in large economic times of disruption. So post GFC and post pandemic, B Corps outperformed business as usual
Yeah,
in
I see
terms of
that.
their resiliency. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, do you feel like you've got a better connection now with your supply chain and customers because you've been able to articulate, we need you, and this is why. We're not, like I say, we're not just flipping widgets here. We're actually doing something of importance.
Yeah, I think it provided us a structure by which we could tell a story and they could understand what we're trying to do. So the ethos that we've had here is that when our suppliers come into our site, that they should be excited, they should be welcomed. They're an important part of the component. We have to explain to them what we do and why the part that they provide is really important to that. And B Corp provides that structure that we can do. Perhaps previously that wasn't done to the detail. We were Tasman Trolleys, not really understanding where the product ends up from a supplier perspective. So it's certainly going out to people and saying that we have been certified. Has enabled us to build that story more and more and understand internally that the supplier component is such a critical part of what we do. And if we get that wrong, we've seen what happens when it goes wrong during the pandemic. There was certainly some suppliers who didn't understand what we do and didn't understand the role that we played in the medical industry.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it gives you just something that people can refer back to. It gives us structure that we can then go and tell our story and someone else has validated what we're saying.
Nice.
And that's a core component rather than just going, well, hey, look at us, we're great.
We're amazing. Trust us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We're a small company, but you should pay us a lot of attention. Because, in hospitals and particularly from a customer perspective, there's always a lot of pressure that they're facing on a day-to-day basis, and we can't occupy too much of their time. From a supplier's perspective, unless they do a detailed analysis of all what their customers are doing, then they typically can sort of forget the role that you play.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, I think I mean, on a personal level as well as on a business level, I think we tend to overinflate the amount that we think other people are thinking about us when actually.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
I did some training at with Meridian Energy. This was a few years ago now, this particular event. And their CFO came in the room to give a bit of a state of the nation before the training kicked off. And I thought this was a really genius piece of information that he gave to their sales team. Was the average consumer spends 15 seconds a year thinking about their power bill. Meanwhile, for you as the sales team, all you're thinking about is your customers and their power bill.
Yeah.
And so you turn up and you're trying to have a conversation because they were going through a period of maybe having to increase their what people were going to pay them for their commercial sales. And it was just such a great framing to go, you're sitting here sweating over this because you're looking at the numbers all day long, but your customer actually doesn't give a shit about until you turn up and go, hey, we need to have a chat.
The bill's going to increase.
Yeah. So I think it's always good to reflect that, despite what we tell ourselves, actually most people aren't thinking about you the whole day. So
get over
yourselves.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's important. But
and I think from a supplier
that you do have those conversations to bring yourself back into the conversation and go, look, you're not expecting your suppliers to be thinking of you all day, every day, but it's like, hey, when you do think about us, we want you to think about us in this way and know that this is what we want to be talking to you about.
Yeah, and I think, you're absolutely right. And it's also the impression you leave when they come on site. So if we had someone who walked in here the other day and it was a connection to a local community. He walked in here and had a discussion with us. We thought we were friendly to him, but we got an email back from him sort of within an hour saying, wow, that was amazing, really welcoming reception, loved what you guys do. And it was just that sort of aha moment when you go, everyone you're interacting with, and he came because he saw us with B Corp. Everyone you're interacting with, you've got to leave that positive impression and try and help make their day a delight as well. So we try and do that with suppliers. What a crazy idea. Yeah, it's just, rather than the truck driver or the courier driver going, oh God, I've got to go there again because they're really painful. is
Yeah.
make them look forward. Oh, great, I'm going there. Fantastic. They're always nice and polite to me. I feel good when I leave the building. Those sort of things become quite important. And you've just got to build that. I know it depends on your culture.
Yeah.
Build that into it.
100%. Yeah. I mean, it's just, yeah, it's something that I'm really passionate about. It's just trying to be an overwhelming force of positivity in people's lives, so that
Absolutely.
when you walk away from the conversation, at best you've had a bit of banter and they've maybe smiled and had a bit of a laugh.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah, and look,
yeah.
I really one of the when we sent out the email around B Corp to our customers and suppliers and that sort of stuff, I distinctly remember the email I got back from you, or the email that you sent through, which was quite humorous, which was your face, a rather large image of your face. I think Oprah Winfrey goes,
Yeah,
yes,
you get a B Corp badge. Yeah,
yeah, and it just sort of, yeah, cool, thanks. It's a nice response to something that you slog over for these sort of things. And while a lot of people don't always understand what you have to do, there's just some local recognition that we've had more people in the last 3 or 4 weeks since we've been certified come in and sort of talk about that. And it's great to have that conversation. So nice. That positivity, I think, is a really important part. And if you have that, if you frame that around your community, your work as what you're doing from a business perspective, rather than just we're here to make as much money as we can today, it leaves a really different impression.
Yeah, totally. It's like what is it? One of those classic 60s Second World War movies, Bridge Too Far, when Sean Connery is one of the parachute regiment commanders, and they've been dropped in, and he gets his junior officers come up to him and say, "Oh, yes, sir, the vehicles have all been dropped over here, and they've been destroyed, and the radios aren't working, and we're surrounded by this SS German Panzer Division. It's all looking pretty grim." And his Batman goes, "Cup of tea, sir." And he sort of goes, all this bad stuff's happening. Do you really think that's going to help? He goes, "It can't harm, can it?" And I just think, like, that's such a good, like, hey, look, you're having a bit of a bad day. Cup of tea? Like, it can't make it any worse, can it? It's probably going to make you feel a bit. So I think, that's just the mindset and attitude of,
and I think that's you've got to keep on reminding yourself and how much there's so many things that you could bring you down on a daily basis.
Yeah.
But certainly having people walking in here and say that was a delight to come is very rewarding.
Nice, fantastic.
So
we were trying to remember how we connected. We can't remember, even though it's only a year or so ago.
I think 12, 18 months, yes.
Yeah. Yes. But we did. But when did B Corp pop up on your radar? And how did it pop up on your radar?
Popped up on my radar about 3 or 4 years ago when I started to see it being used around the place, and then started to understand, try and delve into a bit more in the organisations that were B Corp certified. What did they have that in other organisations? So probably about 3 or 4 years ago started to pop up, and then when we came on board here, it was trying to find something that we could sort of build a structure around, that would certify what we've been doing and the guys before us have been doing so well. Probably 3 or 4 years ago it came up.
Nice. And then, so what was the decision point where you're like, okay, enough looking around, we're gonna do this thing, let's try and then you find this crazy bloke Tim on the internet.
What was the decision point? I think when we sat down at the beginning, as we do every year, sit down at the beginning of the year and try and say, well, what can we use to validate what we're doing in various different components, and that's where we sort of worked out that B Corp probably best represented what we wanted to achieve, and a closer alignment to that than some of the other things. So there were various discussions around ISO and other components that we could go down, but we didn't really feel that they touched on the holistic component, and I like how they B Corp deals with the social, the workers, the governance, all those sort of things. So that was the part where we said, this is something that we should look at more closely, and then you look at some of the organisations that have gone through the process, and they're aspirational brands that there's elements of their business that we'd like to incorporate into ours. It was. I don't think it was a hard decision when we started to break it down. It's yeah, for a small organization, again, is how can we be recognized from that social perspective, the community perspective? And we weren't doing a lot, but we were doing some stuff and having some structure around that. And we were doing stuff in the worker space and have some structure around that rather than having an HR component to it. I don't know if it was a long discussion
Nice.
internally. It's just that that seems to be the right, it gives us the right feelings.
Yeah, very cool.
And the good thing about when we started through that process is it then gave us the ability, because an organisation that's been around for 65 years, there's a lot of processes that are inbuilt into a cultural component. And having gone through some of 2 or 3 organisations where you have ISO, you often see that ISO processes comes on board, it then goes up into a shelf, and then comes out when you go through your annual
get the audit
review, and then so I've never been comfortable with those sort of things, because unless it's ingrained in the organisation, it's really not. It's very hard to support what's going on. It becomes a real effort. So I wanted something that was, or we wanted something that was built into the organisation, and we could pick up on the good things that we have done previously, and just build some processes around that and document some of that.
Nice. Classic B Corp journey in many ways. We're doing a bunch of good stuff. We don't really have it written down anywhere. Let's go write it down. The ISO thing is an interesting one as well. It's every now and then, giving a talk, whatever, people say, oh yeah, but what about ISO? How does it compare? And I think you just summarized it really, really well. It's like, yep, you put it all on a bit of paper and it goes on a shelf. Whereas B Corp, the key to successfully integrating B Corp is to make the stuff that you're looking at and looking to implement, you make it part of the day-to-day, and you make sure that someone owns it. The other thing,
I think, look, ISO has its part in it.
Totally.
And I think if we went down that path, it's a case of building those processes around what you do. So you're not trying to just not fudge it, but the processes actually work in the business. And as you say, I mean, with this great stuff that's been going on here for 65 years, it just wasn't always documented and wasn't always supported. So it wasn't too difficult from that perspective. Yeah.
And the other thing I always say as well is, like, I mean, just looking at, I saw on LinkedIn earlier today, L'Occitane Group, the big global cosmetics company, is now a B Corp. And just looking at the posts on LinkedIn and all their employees, like, oh, we're so excited, we can't believe we're a B Corp. We're so show me the posts saying, oh, we're ISO certified. We're so happy. It's like there's
the quality guys are probably
pop or something. But it's just
and I think that's
how B Corp's captured the hearts and minds of people, whereas ISO and others, just as rigorous, but different.
Yeah, and to say ISO certainly has its part, certainly in the medical component, the environmental component, to deal with very specific things, perhaps. And certainly from a small business perspective, we needed something that looked at more prongs of that wheel than just one or two elements.
100%. So you mentioned there was a couple of companies that you were sort of aspirational. You thought, wow, we can be in the same. So which are the ones that get you fired up, or the ones that you're kind of like, okay, if we could have a little bit of what they do?
Well, I think I look at there's a coffee bean producer in New Plymouth, so Ozone Coffee.
Yep.
And you look at what they've done based out of New Plymouth, so something we can relate to, and where they go, and the brand impression they leave with you is very, very positive. I look at those ones, I go, wow, that's quite cool. That's quite neat.
Nice.
And the fact that we can relate back to it in this region it makes it even easier.
Yep.
So I look at sort of those ones. It's interesting once you get further into the B Corp, you start looking at more and more brands and start saying, okay, so Kathmandu and those sort of ones, you go, okay, yeah, kind of, I can see where that fits. They're social. You knew that from the founder of Kathmandu. So they're probably some of the brands that sort of spring to mind. I was surprised in the healthcare industry there wasn't much
Yeah.
going on.
I think, to me, partly on the back of watching Painkillers, it doesn't surprise me. And having spent so many years in the, like I say, in the device world that I come from, where it's really competitive. Not that I'm saying what you're doing is not competitive, but the when it comes to selling directly to the surgeons, and there's a bit of ego involved, and there's lots of money floating around. Actually, my experience was that the medical device industry is the least ethical, least patient outcome, in terms of it's pretty clear cut. We've got an industry that should just be fixing people. Like that, it's a clear objective that someone comes into this system and they come out better than they came in. The whole system in general actually just cares about maximizing profit. For most of the medical companies. And I think that's reflected in the fact that there's only a handful of medical companies that are B Corp. It's unlike you look at like the cosmetics industry or health and beauty or food and beverage, awash with B Corps. It's now almost, if you're not a B Corp and you're in the cosmetics or health and beauty or food and beverage, it's kind of like, really, you guys? But in medical, it's like, oh, you guys are a B Corp, which to me I think is the opposite,
you're right.
The other way around.
There was another one that we did look at, which was linked into patient safety, which is a US a patient safety movement.
Yep.
And that was very much looking at some of the issues that occur in hospitals and how you can avoid some of those. So that very specific,
very
obviously,
aligned.
to healthcare, and slightly different in the US because obviously it's an insurance-based.
That's a whole other world.
But that's something that we could see that we could advocate for some of those things in patient safety, which is quite frightening when you start to unpick it. As you know, from a device perspective, and what
a crazy idea, Ian! What a crazy idea! You want to be involved in the medical device industry, and you care about patient safety. It'll never catch on.
Exactly. Well, you're covered by in New Zealand, covered by ACC. So who cares what happens really? Sometimes,
and that was so. One of the biggest medical device recalls was from a company called Johnson & Johnson with their ASR hip implant. At the time, it was the world's biggest medical device recall. Class action suits all over the world. In New Zealand, their response was, "You got ACC, deal with it."
ACC, yeah.
It's like, whoa, hang on a minute. So you're going to put all of that cost on the healthcare system because you created a product that failed. Nice one. Yeah. So don't get me started on that. There's a whole.
So I think there's
a monologue podcast I should do about the medical device industry. I feel.
Well, there's a couple of there's some really interesting books about that, particularly US based ones, about how the selling of medical devices and medical drugs is fraught with danger. So we were trying to look at some of those sort of things. Again, we're a small business, so it's how much time can you spend on these things if it doesn't become part of your natural business process. So. But to the aspirational brands, certainly looking at someone local who had done it and had done it many years ago. I think there's 6 or 7 plus years.
Wow.
I thought, wow, that's quite aspirational, and seen it in other places as well. So I thought that was quite cool. And then there's a furniture company in Wellington have done the same thing as well. So
right.
So
that sort of manufacturer, is that NoHo, is it?
NoHo, yeah. So that manufacturing component, which is interesting as well. I'm keen to see how that works out for us a bit more.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think if you can see someone like you who's done it, okay, it's maybe not as unachievable as perhaps I was told or as I thought. So, and I think don't underestimate the power that you will have now, because we've just so shout out to Duncan from Black Pine Architecture, a very recent B Corp. He is the first B Corp to certify in Whanganui, which is sort of lower North Island. And I think you're very similar in Taranaki, like a small community of B Corps, but there's a community there now. You've got a group of you, and I don't underestimate the power that the three of you now have in your ability to start influencing a local economy and having conversations, and more people will pick up. And for me, that's how the B Corp movement is always going to grow, is by us having the best party on the street and people wanting to come and play at this party rather than the other party. And it's like, Ian's a really happy guy and everyone loves going to their warehouse and meeting them, and they're just really nice to people. I want to be a part of that.
Yeah, yeah,
or
yeah.
someone will hopefully listen to this or see you and go, well, it's like if Ian can do it, maybe I can do it. So yeah, it's a really cool sort of ripple effect of impact that you're having there. There's
Yeah,
also
cool.
I should just remember there's Med Enterprises as well, who've recently certified as a B Corp.
Yes, I
They
did
do,
see that. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, I think
So
we beat them. I think they're the third.
yes, so there you go.
Yeah.
Not that it's about competition, but
Not at all.
it kind of is. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's finding. I think, as you say, it's trying to find that unique story that
Yeah.
you can build upon and helping you to tell your story. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think that's quite cool.
Nice. Um, so highlights of the B Corp journey. Um,
Getting your email was certainly a highlight. I thought that was quite cool. The highlights, paying the invoice, so we got the actually got the certification was quite good. That's quite a highlight. I think when I got to the stage that when we went through they were validating and checking on us. That was, yeah, and we were missing a few points in certain areas. When we delved into it further and started to talk further about what we're doing and some of the processes we had, getting to that level that we required, the points that we required, that was a highlight to actually think, okay, we're here. Because
nice.
you go into this thing, with your help, we knew we had points. But when they start checking, you go, okay, well, we need to clarify this bit further, and so we'll peg you back down. The worst I thought we could, if we didn't get it, there was a huge benefit in going through the process just to understand where we were and to build a whole lot of processes around that will validate a lot of processes that we had.
Yeah.
So I think the highlight certainly was to think, oh my gosh, we're there.
We're
Yeah,
going to do
we're
it.
actually
That's a pretty good highlight.
we're over it, and
Yeah.
you think, oh, I've jumped off this phone call or this Zoom call with someone in Germany to validate the numbers, and it's like, wow, okay, I think we're there.
Nice.
Which was huge. So, I drove it internally, and then starting to put some of the stuff around when you actually can start talking about it, and to have, so we had a social group that is coming through to do a tour next week, and the only reason they knew about us, and they're a bunch of 65 plus retirees in the region, and the only reason they heard about us was because of what happened with B Corp.
Wow.
So it's like, wow, that's cool. That's really good. That they've been here. We've been here for 65 years. Some of these guys are 70 plus.
Yeah.
And they knew we existed,
and
now we've got a great story to tell. And we're going to have a morning tea with them, take them through the factory,
nice.
and those things that they're really cool.
Yeah.
And then to be called up by another organisation in the region and said, "Can we come and talk to you about it? We see that you've got it. We'd like to understand more about the process." So, oh, okay. There's a little bit of attention.
Nice.
That's quite cool as well. So nice. Yeah, I think there are a number of moments along that when you think, yeah, this is quite neat.
Nice, super cool. And anything unexpected that sort of either during the journey or something that you're kind of like, okay, yeah, no, didn't really expect that to be a thing going through this, but it is.
No, I think the probably the unexpected stuff was actually how much we had that we just didn't know we had.
Yep.
And we had done it as either had been done beforehand or new stuff that we'd brought in when we joined. So I think it was, how much we actually had in place. And, one of the documents we wrote to clarify our position on a couple of things, being able to refer people to that was really quite cool. So we all get the phone calls from people about, can you sponsor the local Christmas thing and that sort of stuff, to actually be able to go back to them and say, well, have you gone to the website and actually understood about our charitable policy? And have you read that? And as soon as you say, well, go and read that and then give me a call back, and you never hear back from them. So to have that real alignment between what we wanted to do, it's out there publicly so people can access it. That's quite cool. Then even going through to the recycling component, so just breaking down internally, linking our, we have a bonus scheme linking recyclability for the workers, nice. Which also helps from an environmental perspective, but getting buy-in to that to see them actually going, yeah, we had that in place before we started B Corp, but to validate that through B Corp that's quite cool. So I don't think there weren't any pain points through that. I think the big surprise that we probably had more than we thought. we had.
Nice.
It was relatively pain-free, having gone through other ones, similar sort of veins, which can be quite a painful process, and you kind of feel that you're documenting things that aren't really part of your business.
Yep.
And this felt natural. It felt a good fit.
Nice. Yeah, it's not uncommon that people will be surprised as to how much good they're already doing. And I think I'd say the vast majority of companies that we're helping with their B Corp journey, they kind of go, "Oh, I didn't realize that was special or different or worthy of recognition." I think there's possibly an element of that. I think Kiwis in general, we're pretty humble. We like to be involved. We like to give back. We like to try and do as much good as we can in general. It just seems to be most people are kind of like, oh, actually, yeah, we're pretty good, which is nice.
Yeah. But having that structure around, again, talking to a company earlier this week about the same thing about donations and those sort of things. It depended on what day, whether you got the guy in the right mood, whether they actually have a donation. Yes, they had some structure around it, but you could sort of get around that by a phone call. It's really good to be able to have that, and then people go, oh, okay, you're connected to health. Our donations are all tied into health. We've identified the organisations. We've identified some processes in that. It's like, okay, cool. They've given it some thought. So we don't get those sort of random calls. Can you sponsor this Christmas party anymore?
Yep. Nice.
Gone off that list, which is quite cool, quite rewarding.
They should be ringing Ozone Coffee anyway, surely, for the Christmas food list.
Well, not for 5 or 10-year-olds. I don't know.
Well, hey, I don't know. Who knows? Yeah, make it interesting. Yeah. Oh, very cool.
I think that was, that was like you said, a lot of organisations don't have that confidence that what they're doing is actually the right things.
Yeah. And so what does, now you are a B Corp, congratulations. Yes. What does being a B Corp mean to you guys now as an organisation?
It means a platform to develop. It means a structure that we've got to build upon, and gives us some processes to do that. So I think it's just a starting point, and certainly from where our score is, we know we've got to head north of that. And grow that, and we have a very clear structure to do it. So I think they're probably the big parts. It's just keep on doing what we're doing and keep on incremental improvements, not this wham bam. We know we've improved. It's just keep on going. And I keep on saying that you come back to that, the various different elements that you've got going on. So let's check off the community. Let's check off the workers. It just really helps drive some of those things. And we put some of the stuff before we even were B Corp approved. We applied for a local business award, and we used some of the stuff that B Corp had helped us through, and documentation as part of our matrix for applying for the award. So that really helped in that process. So it's just incremental improvements, and keep on going. So now it's built into the organisation. I don't see that being as too much of a challenge. It's just going back and checking.
Yep. And I think, again, bang on, use the assessment to integrate it into your business. It then becomes business as usual, but then keep looking at it for that continual improvement, which is,
that assessment tool, that online assessment tool is just so cool. It's so easy. It's just the ability to go in there and double check and having templates and clarify and put in an answer and having someone respond to it. It's just like, this is way different than dealing with other processes that I've been through, which is wrap everything up, put it in there and send it off and hope like hell that you're going to get through. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I find that part really really quite good. And then once you've achieved the certification is the marketing material they have there. We've taken some of those, put on our website, put stuff in banners and that sort of stuff. So I think they've done a great job from that side as well.
Nice. Super cool. So what does the future hold then for Tasman Trolleys and medical equipment? It seems like the world is your lobster. It's all happening. What's on the
I've been in many businesses before. When you start to look at those massive growth aspirations, it's incremental change and small, that Kaizen continuous improvement that we're trying to do. And with the challenges of being a small manufacturer with historically not a huge amount of investment in new technology. So it's taking on all those sort of things. So it's just incremental. Let's just keep on improving every day. And whether that's just the way that we greet people at the front door and they get excited. If we can win a supplier of a person over like that, then that's great. They've had a great day. Fantastic. That's what you like. So incremental sounds really boring, I know, but
what's the only way to do it, really, isn't it? Otherwise,
we've got up on
you're going to overwhelm yourself. And
we've got up on that whiteboard in our main office. We've got the various different categories, the community, the workers, and so it's just coming back to those things and annually just checking off. Yep, what are we doing in this area? We don't need a radical change from an HR perspective, but we do always need to go back and look at it and are we doing the right thing and what can we improve upon? So it's just the incremental change. Really boring, I'm sorry.
That's all good, man.
As a golfer or as a skier, then it's just getting those lines right as you go down. That's you're looking for the perfect run, aren't you?
100%. Yeah.
And as a golfer, we're always looking for those perfect 18 holes, and it's just the small bits that you can change in there, not the radical. Let's get a new driver or those new skis behind you are going to improve your running faster.
No. I'm the new skis that I'm trying to negotiate with my wife will definitely make me go faster.
Of course, that's the goal, isn't it? You want to go faster.
Always got to go. And I did demo some nice ones the other week, and I did go quite a lot faster. So I'm like, I'm still working on that one. Luckily, I'm pretty confident the wife doesn't listen to any of these podcasts, so I think I'm safe. I'll follow this one. Thanks. Yeah, I'll find out.
No, I think you come back to some of those things. It's just that small tweaking that you can do, and that Japanese manufacturing process Kaizen is just you just take that to heart.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, Ian, it's been really great to get to know you a bit more. I feel like I've got a good mate of mine, Adam, in Taranaki as well, Adam Harris. If you haven't connected with him, you should go. I'll connect you guys up because he's a good bloke too. I feel like I need to come up and test some of this. I should mystery shop you when you're not there one day. I'll come and mystery shop and see how good your hospitality actually is. And I mean, in all seriousness, we should try and get something going because there's you guys, there's Ozone, and there's International Volunteer HQ. We've also got another client who we're working with on B Corp in the Taranaki region. So maybe we try and get a little event going and we come and say hi and we help spread the word about
I think part of how I connected with you is also through Venture Taranaki. So they were very helpful in that whole process and understanding and supportive of that. So that was really really quite helpful. So they probably need some more understanding of what actually goes on, which would be quite cool.
We can make that happen.
Sounds good.
Mate, great to chat. You have a great weekend. Are you golfing on the weekend?
No, a bit of rugby and renovation. So
of course, Rugby World Cup's about to kick off.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's all on. It's all on. I'm hoping to go for a ski on Sunday, but the weather's not looking good for it. So
good luck. Got to try those new skis.
Yeah, man. Well, I need to go and get them first. Cool.
Very good.
All right, mate. We'll catch you soon.
Thanks very much.
Hey, it's Tim here, that B Corp bloke from Grow Good. If you want more content on purpose, B Corp, how to do more good in the world as an individual or a business, then you know the drill. Hit the like and subscribe. Check out some of our other videos. They're probably floating around here somewhere. You know how it works. Thank you so much. See you next time.